Today's lesson is 11.5, Number Lines and Equivalent Fractions. The objective for today is that I will use a number line to identify and write equivalent fractions. We have already learned that equivalent fractions are the same portion of a specific line or a part, the same portion of a part, but they might have different denominators and numerators. First thing you should have done is you should have a page with number lines glued into your notes. On the very first line has already been filled out for you with this very first mark as 0 and then counting how many marks there are on the number line. Just like it's been done for you on the first one, I want you to number all of the ones that you see on the second number line. The first line has already been done for you, showing you 0 through 16. On your second one, I want you to go ahead and do the same thing. What we're going to be working with today is looking at number lines to show us equivalent fractions. The first thing that we're going to look at is this one right here. We have, how can you find equivalent fractions on a number line? Sal rode his bike 3/4 of a mile to school. What is another name for 3/4? So what I would like for you to do is on your piece of paper that you have, again, you should have an entire sheet of number lines. So far, all you've done is you have numbered the second number line, and the first one's already been done for you. Now I want you to go to the very bottom, and you see that you have a blank number line except for the very beginning, which we're going to mark with a 0, and the very end, which we're going to mark with 1, because it's going to be one whole. Fractions are a part of one whole. So what we're looking at on a number line is everything between the number 0 and the number 1. One whole will always be the fraction that has every part on top and every part on bottom. So for example, in your first row, 16/16 is equal to one whole because we have all 16 of the 16 there are available. So looking at the very last one, you should have a 0 and a 1 on those two dashes that are already there. What I want for you to do is to create a number line like you see on this picture. So it's going to be 4/4. So I have 0, and then I'm going to do another dash, which would be 1/4. Then I'll go in the middle, which would be 2/4. And then I'll do one more between my 2/4 and my 1 whole. I'm going to go ahead and mark 1 whole as equal to 4/4 so that I remember that is what 1 whole is equal to on this one. So far, all you have done is what you see right here on my paper down here at the bottom. So if you were confused, you can copy yours down again. So again, I've left all these other ones blank above it. I've got the first 2 numbered, but I'm numbering my very last one just like you see here. Okay, so we start with 0, we end with 1 whole, and everything in between are fractions. So looking back at this, we see the problem says Sal rode on his bike for 3/4 of a mile to school. What is another name for 3/4? Okay, so I'm trying to figure out an equivalent fraction for 3/4. So we know just from our other lesson that if I multiply or divide my fraction, I'm going to get an equivalent fraction. When I look at 3/4, there's nothing that I can multiply or nothing I can divide by in order to both the top and the bottom to make that a smaller equivalent fraction. But I could multiply. So we could end up doing that. But what I could also do is look at a number line like this. On your piece of paper, you're now going to go ahead and number the number line that you see directly above the one you just did at the very bottom. So if I start at 0 and end at 1, I should have 8 total on my number line. So yours should end up looking just like mine, which I'll show you a picture again. So yours should look just like this. So we are looking for an equivalent fraction for 3/4. I went ahead and moved mine so that it would be in line with one of the ones directly above it. But if yours doesn't line up directly, it's okay. We're not using rulers to measure these out right now on this bottom row. So I'm looking for an equivalent fraction to 3/4. Well, if I look directly above it, I'm seeing that 6/8 and 3/4, those two line up. So those have to be equivalent fractions. But now let's figure out how. What can I do to 3/4 to make it become 6/8? Well, if I look at 3/4, let me write with something different. If I look at 3/4, I could multiply both the top and the bottom by 2. Let's give that a try. 3 times 2 would be 6, and 4 times 2 would be 8. Well, that, again, is my equivalent fraction. My number lines help us because they give us that visual that we need to see what our actual equivalent fractions look like, and they show us the same portion of a number line being used. Now, in your notes, we're going to do some of these. Well, we're going to take a look at number 1. So on number 1, we have 0, 1, 6, a blank on the bottom and a blank on the bottom, but we have equivalent fractions written above. So we have 1/3 and 1/2. Then we have 4, 6, 5, 6, and then 1 whole. So we're looking for an equivalent fraction for 2/3. For 1/3. Well, I know that looking down here that all of these bottom ones have to be in 6. So I know that both of these spots are going to show me a 6. Okay, so that can help me to figure out what the equivalent fraction will be for 1/3. Well, again, I know that I can multiply or I can divide any number in order to get an equivalent fraction. So I have to think to myself, 3 times what? So I can multiply 3 times 2 to give me 6. Whatever I do on the bottom, I have to do on the top, which would mean I do 1 times 2 would give me 2 6. So in this blank, a fraction that's equivalent to 1/3 would be 2 6. Well, same thing for 1/2. I know that it's going to be a denominator of 6. My denominator is going to need to be 6. So I've got 1/2 equals blank over 6. So 2 times what gives me 6. So I'm going to multiply both the top and the bottom times 3. And 1 times 3 is 3. So my equivalent fraction for 1/2 would be 3 6. Now, what I want you to try is give it a try for 4 6. Find an equivalent fraction for 4 6. Not 1/3. Find the equivalent fraction for 4 6. In the same spot above it, I'm working out of thirds. So you want to figure out what you can do to both the top and the bottom to make the 6 become a 3. I'm already noticing it's going to have to be a division. I want you to finish out this problem and have it ready to go.